The Watergate Scandal was a botched operation that would spark a chain of events that 2 years later would see Richard Nixon resign as the 37th President of the United States. He was a former lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy during World War II before he became a California congressman and senator. He was vice president to Dwight D. Eisenhower for 8 years until 1960 when he himself ran for election against John F. Kennedy, the youthful and idealistic Democrat who he lost in one of the closest elections in U.S. history.
43 years ago, on June 17, 1972, several burglars were arrested after breaking into the Democratic National Committee offices, which was located inside the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C. The burglars included James McCord, Frank Sturgis, Bernard Barker, Virgilio Gonzalez, and Eugenio Martinez. These men were a part of President Nixon's committee who wanted the president to be re-elected. In May of 1972, they broke into the Democratic National Committee offices, stole copies of confidential documents, and wiretapped telephones in order to monitor conversations. The listening devices needed to be repaired due to some difficulties, so the men prepared to return for a second burglary. These criminals would have succeeded in the robbery had it not been for one huge mistake they made, which set them back greatly, leaving the tapes they used to cover the latches on some of the doors inside the complex. When Frank Wills, a security guard at the Watergate complex, noticed the tape on the latches, he removed it, but did not find anything suspicious about it at first. After about an hour, when he had returned to the Watergate complex, he found some of the latches retaped. Wills then called the police, who discovered, arrested, and took in the 5 men for questioning. When McCord, Sturgis, Barker, Gonzalez, and Martinez were questioned by the police, it was discovered that President Richard Nixon was also involved. The country wondered what the motive was behind the men's unethical behavior. The FBI believed the scandal was a political sabotage effort in order for Nixon to listen to telephone calls and look over documents to get an idea of whether or not he was going to win the re-election.
After being accused of immoral conduct, Nixon gave a speech claiming that he and his staff had absolutely no involvement in the break-in. Many Americans believed his lies, and on November of 1972, he was re-elected. After the scandal blew wide open and more evidence was discovered proving that Nixon was in fact involved, he decided to resign from presidency. He was the first and so far only president that has resigned.
And I want to say this to the television audience. I made my mistakes, but in all of my years of public life, I have never profited from public service. I've earned every cent. And in all of my years of public life, I have never obstructed justice. And I think, too, that I can say that in my years of public life, that I welcome this kind of examination, because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
President?
Yes.
In an attempt to hide his involvement, Richard Nixon bribed, lied, and tricked his way to avoid prosecution. Days after the break-in, evidence showed that Nixon raised hush money for the burglars so that they would not mention him, and in return, they would receive money. Richard Nixon destroyed evidence and fired uncooperative staff members in order to sabotage the FBI investigation. On July 23rd, Nixon refused to surrender the tapes that he had secretly planted in the Oval Office. These tapes had recordings of every conversation that took place in the Oval Office. Eventually, on August 5th, he released the tapes. DN described the continuing cover-up operations as a cancer on the presidency. It then emerged that there had been an 18-minute section of the tapes erased. Nixon's personal secretary, Rosemary Woods, said this had been done accidentally when she pushed the wrong foot pedal, but photos posted for the media appeared to undermine the likelihood of this, and analysis later determined the tape had been erased in several sections.
This is the exact audio from the tape that is referred to as the smoking gun, and in the words of Nixon's own lawyers, proved that the president had lied to the nation, to his closest aides, and to his own lawyers for more than 2 years.
On the investigation, the Democratic break-in thing, we're back in the problem area because the FBI is not under control because Gray doesn't exactly know how to control it, and their investigation is now leading in some productive areas because they've been able to trace the money.
The game was up. Facing certain impeachment after being told by Republican senators that they would vote in favor of such a motion, Nixon decided to resign, saying that the scandal over Watergate would prevent him from carrying out his duties.
I have never been a quitter. To leave office before my term is completed is abhorrent to every instinct in my body. But as president, I must put the interests of America first. America needs a full-time president and a full-time Congress, particularly at this time with problems we face at home and abroad. To continue to fight through the months ahead for my personal vindication would almost totally absorb the time and attention of both the President and the Congress in a period when our entire focus should be on the great issues of peace abroad and prosperity without inflation at home. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office.